Hi everyone, welcome to another Table Talk. So today I wanted to kind of do my wrap-up video review on the inexpensive but capable FlySky FS-i6 transmitter. I've been using this transmitter now for about 10 months. I have in the neighborhood of about 500 to 600 flights on it with park jets, these airplanes back here, foam-built park jets, and you know, I've got a good idea of its capabilities, its durability, that sort of thing. So I thought it was time to do this wrap up because I think I've come to the point now with what I have available to me that I'm not going to bother messing around with any other mods or anything like that. So I had originally picked this up because I had several people over time ask me, on my YouTube channel and other places, what is the best beginner transmitter? And this was actually a very inexpensive transmitter, but I have it upgraded with ER9X firmware, which is really not supported anymore. So this is only, I think, about a $60 or $70 transmitter. But I wanted to find something that I thought would be good as a beginner transmitter, but not something like you're buying the cheapest $25 or $30 transmitter from Hobby King or eBay or something, and then you find that after your second plane or 3 months in, it doesn't have the capability that you want to grow into. So that's why I picked this one up, because I think it's had the expandability that you could grow into, keep it for a while, maybe it be your only transmitter without spending a whole lot of money, and then finding out that after your second plane you need to buy another transmitter anyway and maybe more receivers. So that's kind of what I was looking for. Now obviously because I've used this transmitter for years and I have thousands of flights using this transmitter, some of my comparisons will be towards that. If you're a beginner, you're not going to know the difference, obviously, if you've never flown anything before. But if you're looking to have this as maybe a second transmitter, or maybe you've got a young person in your life that wants to get in the hobby, this is, I think, a good way to get them started without spending a whole lot of money before perhaps maybe their interest turned to something else beyond RC after a few months. So anyway, so let's get right after it. So I'm just going to start off kind of with the cons, and these are not huge cons. They're first world problems, I guess, if you want. Just some things to keep in mind if you're a beginner, or even if you're becoming you're picking it up as a second transmitter. It is a bit small, quite a bit thinner, and about a ½ an inch narrower than most standard size transmitters. So if you have a fairly good size mitt like mine, it might feel like a bit of a toy at first when you're flying. I did a video on adding these foam pads here to the side, so it was very easy and inexpensive to do that. These are just hot glued on there, and they've stood up through several hundred flights and different temperatures. So down below I'll have links to the playlist. I've shot several videos on this transmitter already. Also a link to a thread on the RC Powers forum that I started that will covers pretty much all the lessons learned and tweaks and mods that I've made to this transmitter in the 10-month journey that I've been evaluating it. So please, if you don't find what you want in this video, I encourage you to go down to the video description below and check out those links. Okay, so if you buy it with the default firmware, it doesn't have a timer in it. So if having a timer is something that you need, which I think if you're flying park jets or other planes, you want to have some way of being able to tell you, okay, you've been flying for 5 minutes, maybe it's time to land, so that you don't run your batteries down too low. I know if you're flying a quad maybe or something, that's not that important because you have the battery information in your goggles, but it doesn't come with a timer in the default firmware. I don't know why, but it doesn't. So you'll need to do the firmware upgrade, which I'll talk a bit about some more if you want a timer. Before I did the firmware upgrade, so if you're not going to do it, one thing I did find a bit annoying was that the inactivity alarm. So if you've got the transmitter turned on and it's sitting there and you don't touch any of the buttons or any of the switches or the sticks, after about a minute it starts beeping, beeping, beeping incessantly until you either flip a switch or move the sticks to shut it off. And this happens after about a minute. So You know, I was first flying with it before I figured out the firmware upgrade and got the timer to work properly. I was just using a countdown timer on my watch, you know, so I'd land my plane, I'd walk out to pick it up. By the time I got back to the table, this silly inactivity alarm was going off. So again, minor thing, but I did find that that was a bit annoying. And I don't know if there's a way to get that shut off without doing the firmware upgrade. Once I did the firmware upgrade, it increased the inactivity alarm to 10 minutes, which is, you know, far more convenient for me. The stick tension is pretty loose. So, you know, again, if you're a beginner, you're not going to really know the difference if you've never used a transmitter before. But what I would suggest is I found, rather than messing around with other modifications to make the sticks stiffer, is I just compensate with using more expo. So I fly probably about 4 times more expo in this transmitter than I would in this transmitter. So what I would suggest if you're a beginner, and if you don't know what expo is something you can program into the transmitter that just makes the center movements of the stick just a little bit slower, so that, you know, you're not, if you twitch on the sticks, it's not, you know, your plane's not automatically slamming all over the sky. I would suggest, probably from what I've seen, if you're a beginner, I would set in channel 1, channel 2, your elevator and aileron channels, I would set probably about 60% expo just to get yourself started, get that first flight out of the way. You might need to add even more if you find it's still too sensitive, or maybe reduce it. But I think around 60% is a good ballpark to get you started. The other thing you have to remember is, depending on what you've read, again, if you're a beginner, about other transmitters, is that in order to desensitize it using expo around the center, is your expo value needs to be negative. Many transmitters like this one, you add expo to desensitize the stick. So if you put positive values of expo in this transmitter, you're actually going to make the stick more sensitive, which is, especially if you're a beginner, you don't want. So make sure that your expo values are negative values to soften up the responses around the center of the stick. The trim increments are very minor, so when you're moving the trim buttons here, I found to get the same response, I had to put about 4 clicks of trim in this transmitter compared to this transmitter. So if you take off and your plane is really way out of trim, what I suggest is, you know, get yourself up there nice and high, 100, 150 feet, and then you might just even need to hold the switch all the way over and until it, you know, your plane starts to fly a little straighter. So you have lots of increments, but each increment is very minor. If you get all the way over, if you find you've put all the right roll trim in there that you possibly can, and you still need more, remember that you do have sub trim. You can go and set up sub trim to compensate for that a little bit, rather than getting to the point where you might have to put some weight on your plane to keep it from wanting to roll or pull one direction. So yeah, very minor increments on the trim. I personally did have one glitch. One of my mixes reset itself for some crazy reason. My plane just started to do a couple of wonky things, and I was able to get it back on the ground. So if you've used some mixes, either the Elevon or any of you have 3 separate mixes that you can use. Check, land your plane and go in and check to make sure that for some silly reason, touch wood, once I reset it, I haven't had a problem with it since, but that would be something to keep an eye on if you did have something really crazy that's not self-induced. Once I did do the firmware upgrade, my timer was not completely accurate. I think I was behind by about 4 seconds. So, if where the timer should have been at 1 minute, I was actually at 56 seconds. So if you do the firmware upgrade, one of the things that I would do is just check your timer for accuracy to see where it is. Use your stopwatch on your watch or your phone or something like that, just so that you can compensate and then say, okay, well, I'm 4 minutes slow, 4 minutes fast, or 4 seconds fast, 4 seconds slow, whatever, and then you can set your timer accordingly. The timer can only be adjusted in 10-second increments, which, again, For me anyway, having a timer is winner, winner, chicken dinner anyway. So I can live with the fact that it's only adjustable in 10-second increments. When you do set the timer for one plane, it sets that same timer for all the planes that you have in your model memory. So if you're out at the field and you're flying one plane and you have the timer set for 5 minutes, and you go to fly another plane, but it's really amp hungry and you only want to fly it for 4 minutes, you're going to want to check and make sure and reset your timer every time you select a different model in your transmitter to make sure that the timer is what the value that you want. I don't know why that is, but anyway, I was just glad to have a timer so I can live with that. Okay, so that's kind of the minor cons that I saw. Again, nothing that to me that were huge showstoppers, just things that you might want to be aware of if you're first getting started. So let's talk about what I see as the pros. Well, it's very, very inexpensive. I picked this one up from Banggood with a receiver for about $42, $43 American. Since then, I've picked up the data cable, which I strongly encourage you to buy when you buy the transmitter, so that if you want to do the firmware upgrade, you have it right off the bat. And then I also picked up some cables so that I could connect this to my computer and use it for a free online simulator or any simulator. So for all of this stuff, obviously I needed to put my own batteries in, which would put me over the $50 mark, I guess, but I spent less than $50 US for all of this stuff to get me going. So very inexpensive. Now this is kind of funny, it's a bit off the track, beaten track, but Banggood anyway, they've shown that the regular price for this transmitter at $70-ish for 10 months, and I picked mine up with this receiver for, like I said, $42, $43 I think. But I've never seen, I've checked it probably every week just for giggles and grins, and I don't think I've ever seen it at the full price of $70-ish. So what I would say is that, depending on where you're looking at buying it from, is do some shopping around, because if you're paying more than, from what I've seen anyway in the last 10 months, if you're paying more than $50 US for this transmitter, you're probably paying too much. So, and because it's so popular, it's widely available. eBay, Banggood, I think GearBest. I'm not sure I think Hobby King has a very, very similar one. It looks exactly the same. I think it might have a different badge. There's also one I think called the Eachine, which might have a different badge, but they're all I think essentially the same. So do your due diligence and do some shopping around, and you can get it for a pretty cheap. The receivers are also quite inexpensive. And again, do some shopping around. If you need to buy 2 or 3 receivers, do some shopping around. I actually found this is the FS-i6, which I use a lot. I found these for a bit cheaper on eBay than they were on Banggood, and then Banggood compensated. So anyway, again, shop around. You'll be able to find several different places that sell them. There's also lots of different receivers depending on your needs. If you're flying quads, I've seen some little tiny small ones that are like the size of my thumbnail. The nice thing about these two is, depending on how you have your plane set up, you can have the servo plugs on this one. This is the IA6B coming out of the end, and this one they come out 90 degrees to the receiver. This one is actually a little bit cheaper. This one has where you can have some different sensors, if you were running telemetry or whatever. I find this FS-i6 works just fine for what I need. You also, if you run it in, you have 2 different modes you can run this thing in. These 2 receivers run in AF-HDS 2A mode. I always remember it because they have 2 antennas. You can also run it on single antenna receivers in AF-HDS mode. Now what I found is, if you do the firmware upgrade, is even though the timer shows up in the menu in AF-HDS mode, I couldn't get it to work. So if you want the timer with the firmware upgrade that I used anyways, you're going to need to use AFHDS2A, so you'll need these receivers with twin antennas. There are spare parts available, so if you break a switch, break a gimbal, whatever, Banggood carries several spare parts, and then I looked around, eBay, places like that. You can get spare parts, and the parts are inexpensive. And again, if you look around on YouTube, I did watch a video where a guy showed how he replaced his one of the gimbals. So very inexpensive spare parts. Okay, now this is sometimes a bit of a pro and a con, it's just the internet. There's tons of online info and support because this transmitter is so inexpensive. RC groups, YouTube, things like that. But sometimes it's really hard to narrow down and find exactly what you want, or to get an explanation that's detailed enough to help you. I found that once I did the firmware upgrade to find the values that I wanted for the timer and things like that, I looked around for quite a long time, and it just got to the point where I just sat down and just played around with it until I got it to work myself. So you will need to have a little bit of patience that way. Again, remembering that you're not spending a lot of money on it. There's a fellow Drone Mesh who I think actually put like a TBS Crossfire mod on his. So there's lots of guys. I'll have a link to his YouTube channel. He's done lots of hacks and mods on all kinds of different gear. So if you had some questions, he might be a good guy to ask. Drone Mesh is his YouTube channel. The firmware upgrade, once you've figured it out and don't screw it up the first time like I did, it's actually quite simple to do. So that's one of the reasons why I encourage you. I think, again, because it's so popular, the firmware upgrade that I use has been around for a few years already, but it's not to say that there's not somebody much smarter than me that's already looking at doing other firmware upgrades on this transmitter. So spending a few bucks on this cable could be well worth your while, later on if you want to expand it. And it took literally just a couple minutes, and I was ready to go. And then, like I said, it did take me some playing around to get the timer and things to work the way that I wanted to. It's very light compared to most transmitters, so again, if you have a young person that you're trying to help get in the hobby, this might be maybe a better option. Or if you're approaching your golden years like I am, it's, I think, over 300 grams lighter than this transmitter. So if you're going to be out flying for a very, very long time, it's nice to have the lighter weight. Once you do get your first plane set up, if you fly, I fly park jets, so pretty much the setup is very, very similar in all of them. Once you get the first one set up, it has model copy and model reset features, which are really, really handy. So you can copy a model if you've got it set up the way that you want, and then you can put it in any other channel in the transmitter, and then change the name, make whatever other minor adjustments you need to make. So that's really helpful. It has a 20 model memory, which is really good for an inexpensive transmitter, and I don't think there's any issues. You can have as many setups as you want on every model. You're not going to run out of memory as far as I know, so that's really good. Very easy and inexpensive to set up to use with a simulator. Like I said, I learned through a YouTube channel, which I'll have linked in the playlist, my playlist, which will be in the comments down below. Yeah, it worked out really, really well, and with a free simulator, you're using the same transmitter as you're going to use at the field. Now, some of the features that you would use on a real plane, I don't think are going to be available in the simulator, depending on how, what level of simulator you get. I used a free simulator from online because I wanted to kind of keep it in line with, being a beginner and not wanting to spend a lot of money. So it could be the shortcoming, could be the simulator there. Very easy to set up, basic setup with a 6 servo park jet. So if you want elevons, independent ailerons, and rudders, very, very simple to use. You do need to use up a couple of your mixes, and you have an elevon mix in it. One, I guess this should be back in the con area, is You can't, if you use the Elevon setup, you can't use the V-tail or vice versa. It'll just tell you that you're already using the Elevon setup if you try and set up the V-tail as well. So just so you know that. The antennae are actually quite robust. This is kind of nice. You don't have any moving antennas. It also has two antennae, one that comes up in this little nub and then one that comes up in the handle. Compared to most of your other transmitters that have this kind of movable antenna, which can get caught on things and broken. These are pretty robust and durable, which again is good if you have a young person that might be a little bit rougher on their toys. It has, for a basic park flyer, for me, it has great range. Touch wood, I've never had an issue with any sort of brownouts or range problems. I'm only flying out to, maximum 300-400 meters away from myself. But I think I've seen where guys have tested it where they were close to a mile. So good range even for an inexpensive transmitter. I bought for batteries, to keep things, there are guys that have done, you can find, it would be very simple to do a mod to run it on like a 2S LiPo or LiFi. I've been using these nickel metal hydride AA batteries. My dollar store now actually carries these, so they're pretty inexpensive. And I think I paid about, I don't know, $10 or $12 for this charger. But in the long run, this is about $20. And I should get many cycles out of those nickel metal hydride batteries, and these have actually worked really well. They do tend to discharge a little bit faster in the colder weather, but for thus far, because I've had such good luck with these. Originally I was looking at doing a mod to run it on the LiPo, and I don't think it'll bother. Okay, so if I was talking directly to somebody at FlySky, excuse me, what would be on my wish list? Well, obviously timer on the default firmware, a little bit more capable timer, that'd be kind of nice. But I'm very happy with the timer that I'm working with those limitations I talked about. At least one more mix setup would also be kind of nice, or so that. I think if you had 4 mixes, because I'm using up 2 mixes already to have independent ailerons, if I had another mix that would give me two other mixes I'm not using, then you might be able to set up flaperons, spoilerons for high alpha, that sort of stuff. But again, first world problems. For just a basic setup that I use 95% of the time, this, on most of my park jets, this is just fine. It's no problem whatsoever. So, in summary, very pleased. I just can't say anything bad really about this transmitter. I mean, I mentioned some cons, but I think that those are very minor. So, from a standpoint of a beginner, yeah, I think that this is definitely just an awesome choice because it's inexpensive. It's very capable for its price. And there's tons of information out there on how to change things and how to set things up. So yeah, very good. I have found it's actually quite durable. I haven't done any torture tests where I've dropped it or backed my car over it or anything silly like that. But I have found it is very durable. Occasionally on the switches that I use a lot, these are the 2 switches that I use the most. Every once in a while, these little rings here will be a little bit loose, but other than that, it's been very durable, and I've flown it in temperatures as hot as 27, 28 degrees Celsius, and temperatures as cold as -5 Celsius. Never had a problem with any of the switches or buttons or the gimbals causing me any issues there. So, I only did the firmware upgrade. Do you need the firmware upgrade? Not really, I suppose. I only did the firmware upgrade primarily to get the timer. There are some other alarms and things if you fly quads that probably would definitely be worth the while. Like I said, I would just spend the $3 or $4 on this cable, order it when you order the transmitter, and then you're not sitting around waiting for 5 or 6 weeks to get the cable if the second time you use the thing, you go, oh geez, I really wish I had a timer or other capabilities. So yeah, so there you go, folks. There's my long-term 10-month summary of using the FlySky FS-i6. Like I said, I'm very, very pleased with it, and I will continue, you know, for some of my park jets, I will continue to use it for a very, very long time to come. I've just been really, really impressed with its capabilities for its price, and I would have no problems whatsoever recommending it as a very good, excellent beginner transmitter for people flying park jets or pretty much just about any kind of plane that don't need you know, hugely complicated setup. So again, please check out the comments down below for links to more info that I've either shot videos on or done write-ups on my covering my 10-month journey on this transmitter. Thanks very much for watching. Blue skies, calm winds to everyone. Park jet noise, the other sound of freedom, baby. Take care.